Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Smart Company webinar, which is all about reducing some of the burdens in your business and streamlining workflows to not only unlock efficiencies, but hopefully set you up for future success too. My name is Eloise Keating, and I'm the editor of Smart Company. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Tyron McLaughlin, who's the Regional Vice President in the ANZ region for DocuSign, Daniel Walker, who's the co-founder of Bon Voyage Credit Repair, and Declan Minna, the founder of Digitally and Room Stay. Thank you all so much for joining me today for our conversation, and a big thank you to DocuSign as well for making today's webinar possible. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land where I'm coming from you today, and that's the Wadawurrung people. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where you're all tuning in from, and pay my respects to elders past and present, both where I'm living and all across the many nations within the land we call Australia. So back to our topic of the day, and that's about reducing administrative burdens and streamlining processes to create growth opportunities in your business. We're going to be talking to two businesses that operate in very different sectors about how they've been evolving their workflows in recent months, and also addressing the pain points that start to emerge when you scale a company. We'll touch on ways to make incremental improvements in your business while also staying clear of things like agreement traps, which we're going to unpack a little bit later on. So Tyron, Daniel, and Declan will each share their perspectives as well as some practical strategies that will hopefully help your business thrive in an economic landscape that is changing by the day. Would also love to hear from you as well. We encourage you to send through your questions to each of our panelists or to the group. And a big thank you to everyone who's already sent through some great questions, which I have ready to ask our panelists. So let's get started. Tyron, I'm going to throw to you first. You've been working with small businesses in your role at DocuSign now for a number of years, but also growing your own business on the side too. So I'd love to hear, what kind of trends are you seeing in the market, and what do you think we'll see more of in 2025?
Hi, Louise. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you to Daniel and Declan for joining us as well, and for everyone tuning in. The small business space across ANZ is a huge passion of mine, and I'm looking forward to sharing some thoughts today. With regards to market trends, I think 2025 is going to be a big year. Increased focus on digital transformation is at the very, very top of my list. So if you think about AI, ChatGPT, chatbots like Zendesk, and I think the concepts that we need to think about are small businesses are increasingly adopting digital tools, and they're doing this so that they can streamline their operations, but most importantly, enhance their customer experiences. You mentioned it before, Eloise, the tools that are going to help with workflow automation, they're going to integrate seamlessly into your CRMs, are just becoming so essential for the efficiency. So I think in 2025, I expect a broader embrace of AI-powered solutions as well. So enabling small businesses to personalize customer interactions, automate routine admin tasks, but really, really hammer home on those data-driven decisions when shaping strategy. Implementing AI can be time-consuming and manual. Implementing AI is great for saving time and reducing those manual tasks. And what it's going to do is it's going to give the business owners back more time for the fun stuff like strategy. We don't want to be bogged down with all that admin. I think the second piece I'd mention is that enhanced customer expectations are a trend that just continues to increase year on year. The market is super competitive, and more niche players, they're entering on a daily basis. So maintaining and building your customer base and giving them the best user experience is imperative. They want faster responses. They want seamless transactions. They also want a mobile-first experience. Everyone wants to be able to do things from their mobile and have an experience like they get on their desktop, on their app as well. What we're seeing out of those trends as well is a rise in what we would call product-led growth or a self-service platform. And what this does is it empowers customers while inducing those kind of nitty-gritty operational cost. And that saves you ultimately as a small business on your ROI. And then I think hopefully we'll hear from Daniel more about it today, but for small businesses that onboard consumers, it's about taking them on a frictionless customer journey And I'm really looking forward to Daniel from Bon Voyage talking about this in a little bit more detail. And I think the last thing I'll leave you with is the ability to be adaptable. And small businesses are leveraging technology not just to survive. We're not in survival mode anymore. We're in thrive mode. And what worked possibly before COVID or during COVID might not be the strategy that you need over the next 5 years. So evaluating that strategy, where you want to take your business, and that tech stack that is going to be key for helping you maintain that agile and ever-evolving ecosystem is going to be super helpful.
Thanks so much, Taryn. I think that's like a really important point to spend a moment on, that what worked pre-COVID, during COVID, is not really fit for purpose now in an economic landscape, in a technology landscape that has changed so much and is changing week by week. Really, what the advancements we're seeing from some of the larger tech companies on the AI front, on the automation front, and then we're seeing lots of innovations closer to home too. So I think it's hopefully we'll get some great questions from the audience about how they can help how we can help them navigate that sort of changing landscape. I think another thing that sort of, from my perspective, underpins a lot of what those trends you were talking about is the importance of data security as well. And it's always front of mind for businesses, for SMEs. But I think, Daniel, particularly for a business like yours, Bon Voyage Credit Repair, it's an essential component of what you're thinking about. So I'd like to bring you into the conversation now so you can tell us a little bit about your business, what it does, and how it's been evolving in some of those workflows in recent months and those customer journeys that Taryn mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks for having me on. It's cool to be here. So, essentially what we do is I run a business called Bon Voyage Credit Repair. So what we do as a business is help people clean their credit scores, essentially. So we try and remove negative and ugly data. So things might include credit defaults or poor repayment history. A very common one at the moment is people have a lot of inquiries on trying to get fast loans and things like that. And also we come across court actions as well from time to time. So basically what we do is just try and negotiate those kinds of removals, try and get them off the report. Usually it'll be on a technical or sometimes a compassionate basis. And if we're successful, those scores, they're credit scores that are used in credit applications to try and get those prime access interest rates, the score goes up. And that's the ultimate goal for us. So I'd say we're coming up on 5 years now. I think in May it'll be 5 years. And probably over the last, I would say 6 to 12 months, we've really started tapping into the tech side and using that in our business. And especially, it was touched on just before how people now, or consumers, they want things done quickly. When we're talking about credit scores and people trying to get access to loans and things like that, usually people that we're dealing with are quite stressed. They're already stressed because it's something is stopping them from getting their dream home or their car that they need, something like that. So they're already stressed. And it's quite daunting. Most people don't really understand how credit scores work. And so it's that matter of unknown. They don't know what's going on. They don't know if it can be fixed. So it's super stressful, right? So what's really important for us is to be able to, I suppose, help them quickly. And that's where I guess the tech comes in, what we've brought in over the last 12 months or so. Just as an example, we'll regularly access people's personal credit files, obviously, in what we do. And included in that is going to be things like your name, your address history, driver's ID, all that sensitive information. So in order for us to do that, we have to have a signed consent from our client to be able to do it. So what previously we had to do was create an envelope inside DocuSign, log in, create it, send it off, wait for it to be returned, which could be can be timely in some cases, especially if people were at work and things like that. And if we were backlogged, we had to sign in and that kind of stuff. So what we've been able to do, as just one example, is that through DocuSign as well, we now have a link where we provide to the client or prospective client, and they essentially pre-fill some information that they create the documents themselves automatically by entering that information. and then it's there to be signed at the end, and then we get a copy once it's done. So, what used to be something where we're logging in and manually doing it for everyone that wants us to do an assessment on their file, now it's essentially a blanket email that we send. It's got the link embedded, and then they can go through that process themselves, which really expedites that initial, I guess, consultation or review of their credit file. So yeah, the tech side of it in that sense has been really important for us in having that streamlined process, that onboarding process. And yeah, I'm excited. There's a lot of other tech out there that we haven't tapped into, and I think over the next 12 months or so, it'll be really important for a lot of businesses tapping into this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's very evident in listening to you talk then is the way that you've found a solution that's been brought out of how you can better help your customers. So ensure that during a stressful time that their information is kept secure, that there's fast turnarounds. You mentioned that they're anxious to get results quickly, but I imagine it also really helps your team too, speeding up some of those processes as well. So that's a great example to begin our conversation with. Declan, I'd like to throw to you now. You're running two businesses at the moment, Digitally and Roomstay, and they're both scaling. Can you tell us a bit about what each business does and your key priority at the moment of unlocking this idea of internal excellence?
Yeah. First of all, thanks everybody for having me. And yeah, so first of all, Digitally is a digital agency. It's in its 10th year of operation, and so we are essentially we partner with other clients to solve digital problems, whether that be engineering, creative, and marketing. So think in a way, as a company that's scaling, then we could step in to be an extension of their team, or a smaller company where we would basically own the stack for them, whether it be performance or engineering or creative in that sense. And so then you have Roomstay, which is 5 years old, which is a SaaS business, so a piece of software. The industry term is a accommodation booking engine, or in other industries it would be a checkout funnel. So a checkout funnel that plugs directly into a hotel, a holiday park, or a motel. And so really what it's trying to do is it increases customer conversion and increases web direct bookings versus online travel agents in the sense. So what you have there is a business of 10 years old, a business of 5 years old, and both in growth phases. And so I guess what's common among them, and this is where maybe it becomes a bit unique, so they both are 100% remote. They both have the mentality of, and it's always been this way pre-COVID 10 years ago, which was we hire talent no matter the location. So it's all about hiring experts. They both are in growth phases, and then obviously they both rely on customer service in order to keep client retention and then deliver results. What that has equaled is there's obviously this idea is like sales should break operations, and that's in a good way. And so what was working 3 or 4 years ago is no longer working today. And so that equals, growth of the business. And so we labeled 2024 the year of transformation. And so what that meant, and it will continue into 2025, is we had to relook at all of our processes and tools. And so we began to inject new tooling, new project management systems. We also onboarded into DocuSign Navigator. And so that was all around sort of contract renewals and sort of avoiding that slip in the net of contracts. And so really, if you look at the entire 10 years or 5 years, and especially in the last sort of 2 years, it's about we get the right people, the right experts, we get the right tech in, and then find the right processes. And if you think about this from our perspective, is if you can deploy 100% of an expert to a customer or to a customer's problem, and less percentages into the problem's internal operations, that will equal a happy client, and that equals good retention and less churn. And so that's kind of ultimately sort of the plan and where we're at. And what we're looking at really is that we unlock efficiencies and gains. Experts are deployed to the clients and to the customer's problems. And so, in terms of right people that we've hired, key operation roles, head of production roles, the right tech, I've already mentioned project management systems, DocuSign for contracting, and then processes, like we've really knuckled down on SOPs and internal processes as well. And so all that, if you have a lens on that, it equals like we're really focused internally, so we can obviously continue to drive on the external.
Yeah, that paints such a clear picture of how your customers sit at the heart of all of these changes in a similar way to the way Daniel was talking about the new processes that they're experimenting with and embedding into their business. And I think, already we're coming away from this conversation with a very clear theme there about this importance of keeping customers at the heart of these decisions. Would you agree with that, Taryn?
Yes, that was actually one of the big pieces that I wanted to unbox further. But I do have to, hats off to Declan, the year of transformation that absolutely nabbed at my heartstrings just then. I loved how you discussed your journey just then. But yeah, Eloise, when we think about, what we're seeing in and around the customer experience, you have to keep the customer at the heart of your process. They are your beating heart. As I mentioned before, how you enhance that customer experience, whether it be through better usability with your tech platform or your onboarding process, a partnership that you might have, but also the seamless interactions. And I think showing that you know your customer. So it gives you that ability to really maintain that personalization. And the great thing is there are so many awesome AI tools out there right now that have the ability to kind of just slot in behind the scenes, whether it be within your CRM or another data platform that you have that saves all of this customer or client preferences. And what it does is it gives you the ability to still offer what would seem to be a high touch process, but actually behind the scenes for you and your team, it's quite low touch. And I think ultimately, which I think, Daniel mentioned as well, on top of being, UX focused, we actually have a duty of care to our clients and our customers. So prioritizing their data integrity with really robust security measures is absolutely critical. I mean, we think about the Optus, the Latitude, and the Medibank breaches over the last few years. And we have to ensure that every single time we are handling data, that we are doing it with the utmost integrity and operating in a way that they know that we are secure.
Absolutely. And I think even more so as we're seeing the rollout of more AI powered platforms, maintaining that focus and that integrity around the security of data is going to be even more important. Staying with you now, Taryn, we obviously we're in January, we're at the start of a new calendar year. It's a great time, having come off hopefully a holiday break for some people, to sort of plan ahead or to really think about what they might change over the next 12 months. What areas would you recommend they look at in terms of making incremental improvements throughout the year around some of the themes we've already discussed?
Thanks for that. I think, going back to what I said about being agile, granted the Australian FY runs until 30 June, but it's the 23rd of January. So you might have had a great rest over the holidays and you jump into January refreshed with this robust energy and go, yep, I'm not going to wait until 30 June or 1 July to make these changes. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to look at my strategy. And I think the big thing that comes to mind right now for calendar changes and what we're seeing with the themes that we're talking about with small businesses is how they're really embracing innovation and how that's going to drive productivity. So I mentioned it a little bit before. So I think that's about how you evaluate your tech stack, but then also what those integrations look like holistically. So this means prioritizing tech that talks to each other and not duplicating processes. So make sure that when you're evaluating a software vendor or a partner in general, they can help you tackle numerous challenges that you might have. And, AI has been the theme, and think about AI that's going to give you the ability to pull out data insights, pull out pieces that might be static data, and give you the ability to do that analysis and that in-depth look underneath the hood so that you can use those numbers to impact your bottom line and your strategy for 2025. And there's some incredible software providers that support small businesses, and they're innovating at lightning speed. And I love there's some really great Australian founded ones as well. And it's not just about data. I mean, even if you look at Canva, the way that they're taking their product to market, and they're Australian born and bred, it's really exciting to watch that journey. And I think as small business owners, we're so time poor. I know between my role here and then helping devise on the business that we own, every single dollar, every single minute, every single second of the day counts, especially when you run a really lean team. So when you do think about implementing technology, you're like, whoa, oh, this is going to be a heavy lift. Do I have the time? Do I have the resource? Am I going to have to hire someone externally? But what is really cool is that there's a lot of out-of-the-box builds. They include pre-built workflows and templates that offer flexibility so that you can quickly tailor and customize, and it offers immense and immediate value. So I think what I would say is make sure that when you're thinking about a software partnership, that you're looking at what might be a small business bundle where there's low or no code, and it speaks to the challenges that you need to solve. So I think that's the piece in and around driving productivity, embracing innovation.
That's great, and a really good segue into a question that we actually got from the audience.
Yes.
And so someone who's registered today, this is a sort of a comment they made, but I think we can help them unpack it a little bit. And they've written in, it's completely overwhelming with so many apps shouting at you to use their platforms. One doesn't know which one to use, let alone have the time to research each one. So therefore, we don't use any of them, and we continue with old school running of our business. I think you, in part, have already answered that, Taryn, because you were talking about finding tech solutions that talk to each other and perhaps looking at those small business bundles that are really designed for specific sized businesses. What else would you advise this person who's sort of feeling this sense of overwhelm when looking at what's out there that could help them?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And what I will say is you are not alone. This is a conversation that myself, my leaders, and my team have on a daily basis. But it's also something as a business owner I've faced myself. I think the best place to start, I'm old school, take a piece of paper, get a whiteboard out, or you could do it digitally. And what I would write down are your top 3 to 5 business challenges that you have that you think are absolutely critical and that are going to prevent you from taking your business in the direction that you want, whether that be scale, whether that be revenue growth, whether that be operational excellence and efficiency. And then from there, what I would think about is speaking to a software provider that addresses those problems. So if you're struggling with a clunky process of managing contracts and such, okay, we tick that off with DocuSign. If you're thinking about, all right, what about my customer journey and making sure I really know my customer? Think about a CRM. I mean, HubSpot, Monday.com, they're really great for the SMB space. Salesforce as well is also great. And then I think, think about what and how all of those pieces of technology, they speak together. There are so many, as I mentioned, out of the box software providers that have the small business bundles. But what is really, really key for whoever asked this question is ensure that there's an open API. And what that means, it has the ability for one data source to speak to another data source, and then for holistically for everyone to play well in the same ecosystem. And that will be really, really critical. And what I would also say is don't feel that you need to bite off everything all at once. Think about your challenges, think about a roadmap over the first 6 months of the year, and then take down little projects at a time, and then see how you go from there. And just be curious, ask questions, be open, honest, vulnerable about what you're looking to achieve. And there are some really fantastic people within the software ecosystem that should be able to answer your question, but if not, point you in the right direction.
Thanks so much, Taryn.
As well?
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said. I think it's really important to, I suppose, try those kinds of things and seek that help with it. But sometimes as a business owner, like you just have to slow down in order to speed up. I would consider myself like mildly tech savvy, and so everything that we've done internally with all the tech stacks we've used, like I've pretty much done it myself. But it is still painful, right? Unless you're really in that space all the time, it's going to be challenging. But what I've found with a lot of the systems and the tools that we use is usually they'll have some sort of support function. It might not be fantastic in the sense that someone comes and sit next to you and helps you plan it all out. But usually if you're getting stuck on something, there'll be some sort of chat function or an email to help you build that out yourself. And as Taryn said, you don't have to do everything at once. It's more so bits and pieces, build onto it, add onto it next month kind of thing. But yeah, it is painful, but as I said, you've got to slow down to speed up at times.
I think that's such valuable advice, both Daniel and Tyron. Thank you for that. And I feel like our listeners are getting a real opportunity to get some really valuable practical steps of how to go about setting some of these things up. Staying with you, Daniel, what does the next 12 months look like for Bon Voyage, and what sort of pain points are you already addressing, or you're hoping to address this year?
Yeah, so this year I would say we're poised for a bit of growth. We've lined up a few ducks for us, and so this year I'm expecting a bit of growth. But the challenge that we have with that is as we scale, we need to be able to maintain our service levels, and that's always been something super, super important for us as a business. And going back to what I was saying before, people we deal with are just always stressed with it, right? It's never a fun experience for them when they're trying to fix their credit file. So as we grow, our communication needs to stay top of the class. So that's going to be probably the biggest challenge for us, because with people being stressed, how we combat it is with excellent communication. So I would say over the next 12 months or so, as we grow, that's going to be our focus. And the things that we're going to be looking into would be tools to help that communication side. So the moment looking into suppliers which would help with SMS updates. So the moment our systems will always provide a weekly update no matter what, but not everyone looks at the email. So we're also looking to build in some SMS functions as well. Just that kind of stuff to really ensure that we hold our clients' hands throughout the process, regardless of how busy or how many leads or active files we have. So that's probably going to be our biggest, I would say, focus over the next year or so.
Yeah, that's great. So getting that communication piece really, really well sorted as that growth, like as the business continues to expand. Declan, I'd love to ask you a question now, and that's around sort of building on what Tyron was talking about. Is that it's one thing to have access to all the latest tech tools or platforms or SaaS products, but how do you make sure they're actually the right one for your business, like right now? How have you approached that with both of your companies?
Yeah, it's very similar to the question that came in about being overwhelmed. Really, I think my answer to that is about research. So no matter what I do, I research, right? And so it would be surprise you in terms of like some of the most solid answers or tracks of research that I've gone down has come through Reddit or Twitter, which is essentially just platforms to browse. I remember bumping into a problem with a Google Ads platform, and we actually found the answer on Reddit. And so there was a lot of conversations happening in that world. And so we obviously can be experts in every stream, but anomalies will occur. And so there is information and people sharing information. The other thing is, and this is more top level again, but I network. So I'm part of mastermind groups of agency owners and various bits. And so therefore you talk and you listen and you hear what they're sort of, doing in their words. And that's, from a global perspective, what tools they've injected, what's worked for them, what sort of point they're at in their business. But then ultimately choosing the right tool just to sort of like come down a level again is like, it's really important to us because we are remote and we are global. So we've got team members across the globe, and we do like a follow the sun approach. So having the right software is going to be critical whether we make a change. And so there's, I guess, three core principles of that. So it's aligned to the values and objectives of the team and of the business. And then obviously the efficiencies to gain, which is time and cost, and then sort of the change management at the bottom of that. The alignment and values thing, like I was on a pitch this morning and we were talking about the team members, and we said, and I mentioned it earlier as well in the session, was we hire experts, right? So we want to pull in experts. But then if you were to look at the traits of a team member, is like the second is curiosity. So an expert will always be curious, right? They always want to learn in their space. So therefore, if we're choosing tools, those experts will already have an opinion on this, right? So it's like, for my discipline, for my area, I've seen this, I've heard that. I think this, and so that is important because then you get buy-in of the team. So we go to them first. The second one is efficiencies for time and cost. Obviously, how long will a migration take? What's going to cost to obviously purchase the software, integrate the software, phase the software in and out, and then obviously the third one is around change management. And so a change management plan, how it's going to be done. We take the team on the journey with us because obviously you don't want to cause friction. And so that's the key, right? But in order to answer any of those three things, you need to understand the process in the business, right? So there's no point trying to inject a tool if you are floating at a bird's eye view level and don't understand what happens day to day. And so very similar to if we go in tomorrow morning to solve a travel problem for a hotel or a fintech problem in the agency, we map out a journey. So no matter what, right? So we talk about data-driven, right? So if we preach that to our clients and customers, data-driven, then we must do the same when we go internal. So we map out our own journey first, and then we inject in and make decisions about the tools from there. And so that's kind of, I guess, the decision. So it kind of ladders from research, then team buy-in and curiosity as to what they have experienced, and then we sort of assess from there and then put a plan together to where to go and what to inject.
That's fantastic. I really want to underscore that point that you made there about the team buy-in and bringing your people along with the journey, because I'm sure we've all worked in organizations or in businesses where a change has been implemented and perhaps not everyone has been as involved in it, or unexpected things have been thrown up because that journey hasn't been mapped out. So, and I also really liked the way you talked about aligning it with the values of a company, because I'm not sure that we talk about that enough when we're talking about implementing tech within a business, to make sure it does actually align really well with the outcome that you're trying to achieve and how you want to achieve it. So I think that's really useful to bring up in this discussion. I'm going to move on to another audience question now, and because I think this is kind of building on what we've already been discussing. And this listener has written in a very small team, what are the best ways to manage with multiple people wearing multiple hats? For example, how do you stop people from overlapping too much or duplicating work? So, we would see that happening a lot, I think, in startups, in smaller businesses where you are doing lots of different tasks or functions. I might stay with you on this point, Declan. How have you sort of managed that as your businesses have gotten bigger?
Me specifically is the question.
Yeah, or how you've seen your team sort of manage that.
Yeah, it's good. I think that one of the key things is, especially as you're growing and bringing in team members, is you are transparent. Like, we are growing, and therefore this equals that you will be wearing this hat and that hat. What you don't want is any surprises. It's like, oh wow, I thought that I was just going to be focused on this one funnel area, and so that's probably going to be the key. The reality is, if you're up front and we talk about curiosity, but you also talk about hunger, and that probably is a question that we lead with. Like, are you hungry to come into something that is growing? And so, like, there is maybe we do a score question as part of an interview. It's like, if you're taking these three areas, give yourself a score. You have a total of 20 points, and give yourself a score into these three buckets. And ultimately, one of the questions then comes out is like, at the weaker bucket, was like, are you interested to grow into that? Because what you have is, if you're pulling off the market in terms of like talent, and you want, you bring in the hungry people, and they will want to raise the bar of all three verticals. And as long as you're upfront saying there is three verticals and not just one, then you have the right person ultimately if they want to grow in the role. And so, and I know I'm talking about hiring and about people a lot, because people is key, right? Having those experts. But sometimes as well, what we talk about is like, we want, like, if there's a mentality or an analogy for this, we want sponges. So sponges is obviously people who want to continue to learn, just continually absorb. And so that's why we say you have a team of experts around you. It's like, you can go anywhere to talk to anybody to absorb. And so therefore that equals a profile and a particular type of person. But that's ultimately what, if you have a goal of 5 years and 10 years in your career, then, that's kind of how we deal with that, by sort of being upfront, vetting them with the questions. Do you want to grow in that area? And then obviously they come in and they know what their role is and trajectory is.
Yeah, I that's wonderful, and it sort of ties back to what you said earlier about the values that it really underpin your business, because it seems like that's very much part of that recruitment piece, as it should be. Taryn or Daniel, did you want to jump in on that question about that sort of when you have a small team or a small business and you're all doing different, wearing multiple hats and that kind of thing, how you manage that, but in a way like Declan pointed to, that you're allowing your staff to also grow professionally as well?
I'll let Daniel go, and then I can chime in.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I guess what we do, so we're a team of four presently, so a smaller team, and the way I suppose we try to communicate is just keep it all together, right? We don't have lots of different platforms that we're chatting on. We only use one platform to talk on, which we use Teams. And outside of that, I guess we're all doing different things, right? But we're all working towards the same goal. And so we just communicate throughout that process, whether it be in our Teams chat or a meeting, whatever it may be. But I think, again, coming back to communication, always talking about communication, it's just that again. So, like I said, everyone's doing something different, but working towards the same goal. So, we just have it very clear on our end as to what platform we use to communicate certain things. And then that way we kind of all coexist and we celebrate it together as well. So, certain team players might get a bit more, I guess, recognition like publicly because that's their role they're playing. But internally, we always celebrate, everyone that's played a role in, that successful removal or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think in sort of digital businesses or businesses where you've got a hybrid setup or a fully remote setup like Declan's business, I think you almost have to over-index on the communication side of things because we're in this new world of work. Taryn, what's your view on this?
I think I definitely have to give a resounding thumbs up to the topics the boys mentioned. So the three things I wrote down right away were transparency, communication, and collaboration. I think the transparency piece, I loved how Declan talked about the talent piece and, being transparent up front. But I think also being transparent and always talking about and collaborating in a source of truth. So I think often, and it goes back to that first question we had, can you over implement technology? Can you have too much technology? And the answer is yes. So I think if I look at it from a small business owner hat, it's making sure that you all know what your common goals are, that you're working on the same collaboration or project management software where you can all see what each other is working on, and then kind of communicating on what those goals need to be. And then I think the last part is like really celebrating that along the way, because when you run a small business, you wear numerous different hats, but some days are difficult. You've got to make decisions on whether you're going to invest in technology or an R&D or a partnership, and it could be the difference between maybe paying yourself that month. So every minute, every dollar counts, and I think I mentioned that before. If I look at it from my DocuSign hat, I think all of those pieces are really, really critical. But I think one thing that we speak to small businesses often about is, okay, this is your current state, but make sure all parts and all parties are on board for that journey to know what your ideal future state is going to be. And as we mentioned before, you're not going to get there overnight, but making sure that all employees are aligned on what that is, what the business goals are. They could be revenue, they could be expansion into different countries, they could be bottom line productivity or an expansion of partnerships, but just all, as I say, speaking from the same hymn sheet and understanding and then celebrating those goals as you achieve them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very easy for any of us to put our head down and get through a to-do list without taking a moment to think, oh, how far have we come? Or did we, achieve that goal that we set in January, on January 23rd? Did we actually get there by June or whenever we wanted to? So I think that's really important to emphasize. I'm going to change tact a little bit now because a listener submitted a question on this, but we also talked about this in the promotion of the webinar, and this is the concept of agreement trap. And this goes back to sort of the administrative burden that comes hand in hand with running a business, with setting up a business, and perhaps making some of those, whether it's changing what tech platform you're using or changing a vendor relationship or that kind of thing. So, Taryn, I wanted to see if you could perhaps explain this concept to us and how small businesses might be able to deal with it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, top line, the agreement trap is the value your organization loses due to agreement processes full of incompatible technology and inefficient manual handoffs. But to kind of make it more basic, I'm going to put it in DocuSign terms. It's as basic as printing off an MSA, getting a customer to sign it, and then it sits on your desk and it's collecting dust and it's never been filed away. I mean, for others, it could be that you are using some type of digital platform to store your agreements, but maybe you have some in SharePoint, maybe you've got one on an MSA, maybe you've got one in someone's inbox and they left the business 3 years ago. But I think, what you need to think about it as is it's almost a black hole of where, this time-sensitive data in an MSA could go. Or as Declan mentioned before, you have a renewal that, it sits on a platform somewhere or on someone's desk and it has static data attached to it. And ultimately, the data that is within that agreement trap or within that contract or within that workflow or that process is there. It's stuck, and there possibly could be risks that you as a business owner, you carry. And I think Eloise and her team at SmartCompany will work towards making sure the ebook gets out to the market, but we brought this to life. So DocuSign worked closely with Deloitte, and we discovered that due to challenges around agreement life cycles, there's a $2.9 trillion global economic value being destroyed every day, and expected to grow to $3.5 trillion in 2030 of the agreement trap if it's not rectified. And that's really, really scary. And it's scary because as a business owner, you think loss of productivity, you think increased costs because you need to get someone to do touch audits. And then you think, okay, bottom line, how is this going to eat into my revenue and profits? And I think the constant theme that we're talking about with small businesses is how they're wrestling this disjointed agreement process with this static data. And as I mentioned, it's time sucking. It's this black hole of what could be this profitable data. So what DocuSign saw was an opportunity here. So suddenly we could offer a platform and a software that gave businesses the ability to access insights around their agreement data, automate agreement renewals, close business deals faster. And what I love is that it's such a low lift. And I know I mentioned before about finding a tech provider that is low code, it's out of the box, that you don't have to spend 4 to 5 months implementing. We're seeing customers implement IAM and see value within 14 to 28 days. So that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's almost one of those sort of issues or problems that sits below the surface, like you said, that it's not sort of front of mind for people, or it gets lost along, things get lost along the way when you change staff or you move platforms or whatever it is.
Definitely. And I think it's, when we look at it, it's about how you create those agreements. And we mentioned before across this whole entire call, it's about the collaboration, the automation, the business process it's about how you commit to them. So how are you getting them done faster? And then it's about, and I know Declan managed it before, it's about how you manage those agreements and the data that's within them. And I think it gives small businesses that extra headspace to manage all these new challenges as they get thrown on their laps. So, I mean, I'm super excited about how IAM and DocuSign are tackling this agreement trap. And I think one thing that has been really apparent post-COVID is that there have been some amazing businesses that were born out of the creativity of people taking time off from work or having more headspace at home. So as a result, though, people are innovating. And what was not necessarily niche before, businesses are faced with even more ways that they need to stay competitive and how they're unlocking kind of what's market leading and giving them that edge. And when you think about it, it's data. Data is what's going to give you the ability to have easy insights. It's going to give you the ability to easily have agility to move a strategy if something else gets thrown across your desk. And it gives you the ability to innovate in how you approach your overall business. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel or Declan, did you want to chime in on that concept at all, or perhaps ways that you are maybe thinking about it in your business?
I'm happy to. I think essentially everything Taryn mentioned we've been through. So, and maybe there's smaller businesses on the call. There is a learning in this. So, if you think about this as like the conception of a business, you may have a few MSAs, a few NDAs, a few SOWs, and they may live in various places. And we did digitize from the start. what we find is like as the business is scale, you're dealing with hundreds of these, hundreds of these across both businesses. And in that moment, it's like everything Taryn had sort of mentioned, which was it's like, hey, there's a renewal. It was like, well, how are we not automated out of that? And so that's kind of now we're at this moment of like, if you had, and nobody's got a crystal ball, but if you had thought we were going to be sending hundreds of these and signing hundreds of these every month, every year, every period of time, then you would have taken this more seriously in that sense, but you don't know that. And so that maybe is a learning for somebody in an early phase of a business. Was like, you know, that is something that obviously is important, especially if you do think that this will be large volume. And so that has been part of our, I guess, our transformation as well, is to let's get this moving and let's get it automated as much as possible. We don't want, you know, a customer knocking our door saying, am I up for renewal? Like, we should be talking to them first. And that should happen automatically. And so, yeah, that's, we live and breathe it at this moment.
Absolutely. It's sort of, it's, you know, you don't know what you don't know kind of thing, like you said, when you're getting started. So yeah, no, that's really valuable to hear from someone who's going through that, who's finding a way through it now. I want to ask a couple more listener questions because we've got some good ones here. This one is someone's interested in seeing or learning about some examples of efficient workflows. So, you know, they're asking, you know, when we say efficient workflows, are we thinking about things like turning sales leads into contracts? Are there examples that we could share with them about efficient workflows from contracts to billing? I'm not sure who might be able to be best placed to answer this. But are there any kind of examples, Declan or Daniel or even Taryn, that you could sort of mention to, I guess, when we talk about efficient workflows, what are we really talking about here? Perhaps are there examples from your own business that you could share?
I'm happy to take it. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you went end to end there from contract through to billing. So ultimately, if you see this in 3 layers, there's obviously the negotiation contract phase. In our project management tool, we'll have a deal set that mirrors this. And that project management software then is connected to our finance software Xero. So the moment that contract drops, that deal is turned to a project, and that project is then hooked to Xero. And so that equals one flow of a piece of work, as opposed to information getting dropped of what exactly happened in that moment. So that's full transparency. Everybody can see the contract, they can see the project management, and then it moves through to finance to invoice on completion. And that there's no smarts in that. Like back in the day, we used to use Zapier and various tools for, like, you know, notifications. We're at this phase and that phase. Today, that is just simply that we know that there is a process and a workflow that nothing can slip the net. So the deal is set up, the same time the contract is set up, all the details in the deal for that to be turned into a project. And then finance is aware because it's hooked into the project management tool. And so therefore, when the project management tool say completed, ready for invoicing, we're ready to go. So that obviously saves on essentially invoice misses or information misses, because we're sort of having that constant overlap in those 3 streams.
Absolutely, and it speaks to, I think, what we were discussing earlier about that transparency too. That if people like you've got fully remote teams, if they can all know what stage various things are at. Daniel, is there an example in your business that you can think of that you would describe as an efficient workflow? Perhaps something more recent that you've set up, or something you've had from the start?
Yeah, for sure. So kind of going back to what I was saying before, is a really good example of something we've only just implemented probably a couple of months ago now, which was it's just a workflow where the user or the client kickstarts it themselves. So we don't have to do anything on our end. It's a link that starts the process essentially, or the workflow. So they'll click the link, then essentially from there they'll fill out their information, so their name, email, phone, that kind of thing. Then once they move to the next step, it creates the documents, which is our document template, which is typically a privacy statement or a consent, with everything that already filled out. So essentially all they need to do is just have a quick read over it, and if they're happy, tick, 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 sign, and then it's done. And they'll get a confirmation saying it's all done, we'll be in touch shortly, and then we get the signed documents. And then from there, we can conduct the assessment and get back in touch with the client. So that one we've only just recently set up, probably in the last couple of months, and it's just helped so much. Like, we've saved probably hours already just in that simple workflow.
I could imagine you said you're a team of 4 people, and to have some of those things just set up would be a game changer.
Yeah, so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Look, we are getting close to the end of our call now. We've got about 10 minutes to go, and I do want to give everyone a chance to sort of share some final thoughts, or perhaps something that's come up for them in today's discussion. I've learnt a lot myself, which is always a great pleasure to go away from my daily deadline and get a chance to speak to people like the ones that we have on our panel today. But things that have really stuck out to me is the value of transparency across all this kind of change management, or these implementation of new tech platforms. I'm going to quote Daniel in saying, "You've got to slow down to speed up." I think that's really valuable, and I think that's something that we can all keep in mind this year as we are trying to adapt and stay agile, as Taryn said. So I'm going to go around the panel, and any final thoughts or pieces of advice, or things to avoid is always a good thing to keep in mind. I'll stay with you, Daniel, and then we'll go to Declan and then to Taryn.
Yeah, thanks for that. So, I guess probably last thing I would say, we kind of touched on it before, but or someone I think made a comment about it, that getting overwhelmed by all this tech and AI, and like totally understand it. But Declan mentioned something before as well, that he's a part of networking groups, and that really helps him, workshop certain things. And that's been really important for myself as well. Obviously, we're talking about tech today, but any challenges that you're facing as a business owner, I guarantee you there's other businesses facing it, and most likely some in your network. So sometimes it's just about reaching out to another business owner that you know, and asking them, what do you do with these kinds of things, and just having that kind of conversation. And through that, you'll come up with ideas and brainstorm, and more often than not, there'll be some sort of tool or app or something that will help your day or your week go much easier. So yeah, that's probably the last thing I would say, is just reach out and talk to people, and they will help you in terms of how you manage your tech and streamline your processes.
Absolutely. I think, the small business community, the startup community are all incredibly generous in sharing what they've learned, and things that have helped their companies. Final thoughts from you, Declan?
I guess it could be taken into tooling, but it could be more just in sort of overall business ethic. But I've never regretted taking a risk, right? And so if it means taking a risk to inject a piece of software into a workflow, or if it means taking a risk on the business idea or the next evolution of business idea, like in the grand scheme of things, is like the worst thing that can happen is you fail and you look backwards, so I've learned something. And so with this idea of injecting in tooling, whether it be AI, just take one workflow stream and inject one tool, and then go from there. And so I think that's the key, is like assess it, move it, either adopt it or remove it. And so I think anybody that is in small business will have taken the gamble already to make the business, and so like take the same methodology when it comes to tooling, which is like, you'll not regret it because you've learned something that didn't work for me because of these reasons, and then the next time the next tool comes, you will be able to decide, is it right for you or not. And so, but I think a lot of this AI, like if you think about the grand scheme of where we're at in AI, is like we're in the 1995 era of the internet. A lot of tools are on the market, and a lot of it is not mature yet. So it may work for small business, it'll probably not work for enterprise. But the scale and the speed it's moving at is like, yes, we constantly need to keep watching and trying and testing things. So what works today may not work in 2 years or a year. And so that is a key thing to remember as well, is like, implement it now, that like things is going to move fast anyway.
Absolutely. And to your point earlier, that keeping that level of curiosity out there, and doing that research and looking in unexpected places, you might find the answers that you're looking for. So over to you, Taryn, for any sort of parting thoughts.
Amazing. Thanks, Eloise. And Thank you, Daniel and Declan, and for all the great questions that we had today. We covered a lot, and there's so much more I'd love to share with all of you as small business owners. I think my reflection is the AI piece. AI isn't going anywhere. I think it's thinking about how you weave that and layer that into your tech stack, and how you springboard and are agile from that. I love the piece that everyone said about finding your network. Be curious, ask questions. I know I mentioned it before. Be vulnerable. LinkedIn has been a really great resource for my small business, and making sure you kind of lean into that and read the trends of what people are seeing and saying and what's been successful. And I think, as Declan mentioned, tech is innovating so fast. And a lot of these SaaS providers, what they often allow is a 14-day or 30-day or a minimum trial. So test and learn. Do A/B testing. What might work now, you might have to evolve further as the years come on. So I think keep that goal in mind. And I know I mentioned it before, like, think about what you want your ideal future state to be. And then as a team, whether it's 2 of you or 5 of you or 25 of you, make sure everyone is on the same page and you're running at that goal as a collective. I know that we didn't get to cover everything that will be in the future ebook. So I know Louise and her team are going to get that out the door, but I will drop through a link if anyone has any further questions and they wanted to follow up directly with myself or learn more about how DocuSign helps to support small businesses and rectify the agreement trap. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the link that I've just popped in the chat just now. But thank you everyone for today.
Great, thank you, Taryn. And that, the value in these kind of conversations is what people can do immediately this afternoon or tomorrow or next week. So I hope you've all been taking notes, as I have, and I'm sure our other panelists have. And as Sarah mentioned, we will have an ebook coming out with lots of resources, lots more further details and information for you. To the point there about LinkedIn as well, it's a great resource, and I would recommend, connect with, the people that we've had on our panel today, or, just you can follow people along too, and just follow what the information they're sharing too. And so if you're interested in some of these companies or what they're offering, or some of these businesses that you admire, I would recommend following them and learning from what they're doing too. So it does bring us to the end of today's discussion. I really do hope the webinar has given you plenty to think about when it comes to how you can start streamlining processes, and also some inspiration to help you lay the groundwork for that future success for this year and for the years to come. Thank you all so much for tuning in, especially those who sent in questions to our panel. And of course to our panel for being here. It's not lost on me that you've given up an hour or longer of your day to share these insights and resources with our audience. So it's been wonderful to chat with you all. And of course, thank you again to DocuSign for sponsoring today's event, for making this kind of conversation possible. There will be a recording of the webinar on SmartCompany in the next few days. So if you want to listen back or you want to share it with your team, please do. And keep an eye out for an email that will provide a link to that ebook that we've been talking about as well. So thank you once again, and I hope to see you all on another SmartCompany webinar soon.